Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. Good to see you all. Some familiar faces, always some new faces here and there. Great to have you here. Peter, I see you, Peter Roden. I see you zooming in from Colombia. Good to have you here too. Very nice. Yeah, we got a good turnout today. So we'll hang on for a second until people get settled. Got some cool looking environments here for some folks. See a really interesting ceiling, some type of cool antique ceiling tiles in somebody's room. I see a workshop space. Very cool. All right. We do still have a few people sort of leaking in through the cracks here, so we'll kind of let them get inside, and then in a moment we'll get started. I do think we are far enough along that I can do an intro to the session here and then get rolling. So just to say, as we always do, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at a craft, help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. It's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. And you can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. We do have an upcoming lecture that will be airing on December 3rd. And as long as I have my date remembered correctly, that should be a Saturday, what will occur kind of before our radio hour session. And that will be with the awesome Larry Lobel, who's a regular audience member and a previous guest on Radio Hour. And he would like to talk about tuning pins, a very underexplored topic. Although we're always exploring them every day when we tune pianos, we may not always have a chance to consider, their fully their functioning and how to optimize what's going on with them. So Larry he's optimizing a presentation that he has already given in some settings. So it's tried and tested, and it will even be new and improved. And he likes to call it the Tuning Pin Symposium. So look out for a link to sign up for that soon. As we often do, we will offer special pricing for that lecture the earlier that you sign up. We usually give it about like 10-day periods at a time, and then we raise the price until it gets to show time. And so you can save yourself, 100 or a few $100 depending on how early you jump in. So look out for the link to sign up for that. And then the other thing is, I didn't set up a formal link, which probably would have been the best business practice, but I will offer you all this now, and I will offer it later today. And this does apply to people that are watching us online on YouTube or something like that. For the content for today's lecture, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show a bit of the lecture we mentioned in the email, which is Dampers from the Ground Up. But I'm also going to share a couple other lectures from Steve Brady, so you can get a sense of, all the wonderful content that we have from Steve. And so we'll check out a lecture that's called Tooling Up as well. And we'll also check out a bit of a lecture on voicing. So we should have time to touch upon all those three. And what I thought I would do, and again, for people sort of paying attention today, this has been kind of a fun idea that I've been doing the past few weeks. We review some lectures that are in the library, you get to take a peek. And if it piques your interest, no pun intended, then you can contact me, and I'll give you actually a special discount because you're here and you're paying attention, and we appreciate you showing up on a Saturday to advance your skills. So this is a pretty extreme discount because usually we're going to do 3 lectures for about, one lecture a piece are usually around $250, $300 to buy it after the fact and view it in the library. If you just wanted these 3 lectures from Steve Brady, I'd be able to give you a price of basically $300 for all 3. So it's basically a 33% discount, or it's like $100 a lecture. So anyways, it's worked well to do this past couple of weeks. I'll just say, email me, ethan@pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, or reply to one of the messages that I've sent out and say, hey, I'm interested in that. I'll set it up. I'll give you a discount code and we'll make that happen. So just to show our appreciation for you guys participating live. And I will say, by the way, before we get started, on that note of live participation, we love to have you guys here live. And I think it really helps with the energy. When I tell people, who aren't in the piano industry, that we have like 20 to 50 people showing up every week, they're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And I like to see that we've built this community. But what few of you may know is that we have an email list of about 4,000 piano technicians. And the open rate on that list is pretty high comparatively to other email lists. We have about a 25% open rate. So whether you're showing up here every week or not, we know you're paying attention and you're following along, and you're probably reviewing some lectures in the member area too. So if you do the math there, that's about 1,000 people checking out the email, maybe up to 8 or 10 times a month. So we've got a great community here, even the folks that aren't present on the live calls, and really appreciate having you all involved. All right, so without further ado, let me get into the lecture content from Steve. The first one we're going to hit is Dampers from the Ground Up. And I think you'll see that this lecture is pretty awesome. Steve actually has some content, I believe, in book format that he shares within the lecture a little bit. And I think the book that he's sharing from my memory is his well-known book, Under the Lid, although it may be another resource I'm not aware of. I see David's holding up his copy. He's hugging it like it's like my son hugs a stuffed animal. He loves it. It is a great book, and great illustrations, by the way. He said that a friend of his, I think locally, happened to be like a great illustrator, and he contracted them to do some of the illustrations for that book. So yeah, we'll look at Dampers from the Ground Up, and you'll see he's like, dampers are very confusing if you don't have a chance to study them, right? And so he really, the book is a great resource, but he really goes into detail about how he thinks about dampers, how he makes them perfect, different steps. It's a really great lecture. So, but let's show, not tell, how great that is. Let me get that queued up. Okay, and put up the right timing. We're going to start at about an hour into this one, actually. Let's get it. All right, that looks about right. I'll share my screen, and yeah, I'll put myself off camera and on mute, of course, but I'll be listening and watching the feed too. So if there are any issues, like sometimes there's volume issues or whatever like that, just let me know, and I'll try to take care of that as soon as I can.
So we're ready to drop the dampers into the piano. And we need to know where to set the underlever. Okay, just a close up of that. Okay. So I use a gauge like this. I'm going to back out a little bit. Yeah. Okay. There are all kinds of gauges like this you can get. And the idea is that this blade, to set up to calibrate the gauge to the back end of the key, you lay this blade on the key end felt. And then later we're going to come back and set the underlever on top of the blade. So we get the height adjustment by putting this on the key end felt, and then in the piano, we drop the underlever on top. And this distance is the amount of play or lost motion before the damper starts picking up with the key. So it looks like this. And there's a set screw over here. I loosen that, slide this up and down until the blade is just touching the key end felt, and then I tighten this down really tight. I like to transfer this top measurement, the top of the blade, to the damper call, so that I'm not doing one damper at a time. I can do a whole section at a time. And so it looks kind of like that. And once I've got that measurement, I've got the call set up, then I put it in under the underlevers. And at this point now I've got all of the damper wires in, but the screws are still loose. So I want to make sure that I tap down these underlevers until they're all resting on the call and they're not, you know, somehow being held up from the call. And that's why it's so important to have the wire moving freely in the top flange. Then I'm going to come in and tighten these screws. So here's tools that I use as I'm installing the dampers in order to get them regulated right. For tightening screws, you can use a very small screwdriver like this, or you can use a screwdriver with a finder. Like this is a tube with a screwdriver type blade in the middle, so that you can just drop that onto the screw and turn it until the blade drops into the slot. I have to admit, this is probably my favorite tool, both for loosening the screws. Juan Alberto was asking about loosening the screws if they're too tight. This is my go-to tool. I really like this. These are gas burner pliers, and you can't see the end of them here, but if you looked at the very end on, you would see that there's a little, that the jaws are rounded on the end. So they fit over the head of the screw very nicely. And
One moment here. Not sure why the video is stalling, but we'll try to get that going in a sec.
there's a little that the jaws are rounded on the end. So they fit over the head of the screw very nicely. And also that area has teeth. So you can, the teeth can grab the screw. And
Are we able to zoom in on that like we were before?
Yeah, I should have gotten a different view of, I should have got an end view, because you know, where you would wrap this around the screw is the end. And so the part you can't see is rounded, sort of like this area is rounded. But gas burner pliers are the bomb. They are the best for so many jobs on piano, and especially damper work. So that would be my go-to tool. Anytime screws are overly loose, this would be the tool you would use to loosen them. Or if they're overly tight, you would use this to loosen them. But I use it all the time for loosening and tightening screws because it's so much faster than these tools. This would be the slowest tool. This is a little faster, but I don't get as much leverage on this tool. The tube is fairly small. I like this because I can get a lot of leverage. It's a very fat handle. I mean, this is fast, but you don't get a lot of leverage. And this is great, it's fast, and you get lots of leverage. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little. Okay, so this is I think what I'm trying to show here is I've got a damper that is twisted. It's not in line, and this one's kind of twisted too. See, you want the heads to line up with the strings. And this is inevitably going to happen as you tighten these underlever or the top flange screws. Some of the damper heads are going to twist. I like to do it in 2 passes. So the first pass, I'm going to do it basically finger tight, so that I minimize the amount of twist. And then I can go in and easily correct the twist, and then and go through the whole process a second time, tighten things down really tight, and go through and correct the twist again. So here's an example of damper head is twisting as it goes up. So the way you correct that is I'm going to go in with my duckbill pliers. And these are another tool that I highly recommend for damper work and a lot of other things in pianos. But duckbill pliers ideally have lots of leverage. They have teeth. These are obviously very well used. But I go in with the duckbill pliers, and I'm going to have to zoom out. Okay. And at the base of the damper wire, I'm just going to grab onto that wire really hard and give it a twist in the direction that I need to go to straighten out the damper head. Usually this tool is ideal because it doesn't really hurt the damper wire. And I will say also, even after you've tightened these set screws down really tight, you can still do this adjustment with duckbill pliers. And even if it means that you're twisting the wire a little bit, you're actually putting a plastic twist in the wire. Damper wire is very soft. It's about like coat hanger wire. So it has quite a bit of malleability. So it's okay if you're not turning the wire in the top flange, you're actually putting a twist in the wire itself. That's fine. Okay, another adjustment that I have to do early on, usually after installing the dampers, is the fore and aft tilt. And it's very simple. Again, it uses the cheapest of tools, your own hands and fingers, and you just tilt it in the direction it needs to go. You can see if like one end of the damper is lifting earlier than the other end. And so what you want to do is go in and try and level that out to the string. That goes very quickly, and it's pretty simple. Okay. Now, what I've got going on here is a damper head is not twisting, but it is traveling. See, it's the whole thing is moving to the left as it comes up. So how do you solve that one? This is a tool you need to have in your kit for so many things. This is bending pliers. And if you're going to get into damper work like this, where you need to correct a traveling damper head, you need this tool. There is no other tool that will do it. That's what the end of the tool looks like. You have a convex and a concave jaw that meet, and when they meet and you put pressure, it'll bend the wire. So to correct the traveling damper head, we're going to use the bend D, the top offset bend. What a traveling damper head means is that your lower and upper segments are not quite parallel. So you just correct that at bend D. You don't need to mess around with bend E. Use the top offset bend, give it a squeeze in the direction you want the damper head to go, and you don't need to do much, just a light touch with these pliers. Okay, so that is traveling damper heads. Now, spacing damper heads, there's two methods, and spacing is when you've determined that the damper head isn't in line with the three strings, and you need.
All right, so a fun little share from the damper lecture. It's called Dampers from the Ground Up from Steve Brady. As I said, pretty thorough, really great stuff goes into tools and methods and lots of great views and video clips and photos and stuff. So really cool. All right, next one up is going to be his tooling up lecture. Similarly detailed, he kind of goes through his toolkit and kind of shows the different tools he likes, different categories, even carrying his tools, modifications of tools, making tools, stuff like that. So we'll catch about 10 to 15 minutes of that one as well, so you can get a nice little sample. And then we'll come back and close it out with the voicing lecture. Let's get straight to the content, unless there's any comments or questions. All right, here we go.
To bring it in line.
Let's run the video of the offset key spacer modification. Just first, I'll just, which camera is live here?
We'll cut to the video right now, but we won't start it. And
Okay.
then we can come to narrate it.
Okay,
Okay?
very good. Okay, so we all have the offset key spacer in our kit, right, for spacing keys, but it's a straight tool that we put in our combination handle, and then we have to twist to bend the front rail pin in order to space the key. And the only problem with that is that you don't have a lot of leverage in a combination handle. And so it takes a fair amount of strength to exert enough twist that you can actually bend the pin. So I have a modification, and I'm going to show you how we do it. So go ahead and run the video. And I'm going to go in there. All right, so I'm clamping the offset key spacer into the bench vise, and I've lit the propane torch, and I'm starting to heat approximately where I want the bend to be. It's hard to get it red right at the top of the vise because the vise is kind of a heat sink. But you notice the colors developing there. We've got some yellow, some blue, and we're just going to keep this torch on it. It takes a while to get from this point to where it's cherry red. It's starting to get red now, you can see it. Okay, now I'm going to reach for some tools that I forgot. Yeah, that's getting nice and red. Okay, now I'm going to reach for my tools, and now I've got to heat it up again. Okay, and once it's red hot like that, you can just clamp onto it and it'll bend right there. I'm going to bend it a little more. And the idea here is I want to have it pretty hot by the time it gets to the water. And I've just plunged it into the water and quenched it. It's just below red hot now, so it won't be too brittle. But the idea here is that, you know, we've put a 90-degree bend in the shank of the tool. So now, when we chuck it up in our combination handle, we've got lots of leverage, and it makes the job so easy. The other thing that I do on this, and I'll show you in a minute, is I slightly bevel the business end of the tool so that it's easier to slip it under the punchings. So here's the completed tool, and you notice the little bevel here, because we all know we don't want to use this tool on top of the punchings, right? We don't want to nick the front rail pins. So just putting a little bevel in makes it easier to slip it under those punchings. I must caution you though, you don't want to put too much of a bevel in because you take away from the working area of the tool, and you don't get as good of a grip on the front rail pin. So that's a modification. Now, how do I bevel it? On the grinder. And it's very easy, just takes a minute. And you don't need to you know, heat up the tip before you put it on the grinder. The grinder is plenty strong enough to create that bevel. I have, I'm just going to describe this one, but we all have, well, maybe not all of us, but if you've ever restrung a piano and you wanted to clean up the bridge pins, or say you've recapped the piano and you've put new bridge pins in and you want to file them down, using a flat file, it's really easy to skin your knuckles. I know that because I've done it a lot over the years, and I finally figured out a way around that, and that being to create a 90-degree bend in the tang of the file. In other words, this part. And then you can go to any hardware or woodworking store and you can buy a file handle, a wooden file handle, and you just jam that down over the tang. And now I've got a tool where my knuckles are safely out of the way. And I can go like this. I've made a few other tools, you know, by bending. Here's an offset key, or offset screwdriver that I made out of a regular screwdriver just because I had a particular need for an offset screwdriver that had some altitude to it. The ones you can buy are pretty flat, and I needed to reach over something and turn this screw. So I just put a bend in a regular screwdriver. And again, it was the same way. I heated it up with the torch, put the bend in it, and then quenched it. Okay, here's what I'm making here is I'm modifying a screwdriver to help remove a broken agraff stub. I don't know if you've ever had occasion to remove a broken agraff, but it can be an adventure. And if you read some books, they'll recommend that you drill a hole in the middle of the agraph stub that's left in the plate, and then use an easy out. Well, the problem with that is it can be really hard to start that hole in the agraph because the agraph stub doesn't break off cleanly. There's usually some kind of an angle, and it can be really, really hard to get a drill started in there. You can mark it with a punch, but you know, good luck. And then the other problem is easy outs are very, very hard steel, about as hard as you can get, and they're very brittle. I actually had a former student from Oregon who, I mean, he had moved to Oregon and was working down there. He's been a technician for many years, excellent tech, who called me one day and said, "You got to help me, Steve. I was removing a broken agraph and the easy out broke in the stub, and I can't get it out." Well, that was an adventure. So I don't recommend using easy outs on broken agraphs. The first thing I always try is a modified screwdriver. I'm going to show you the modification. So this is just an old rusty screwdriver that I have had it floating around the shop, and the width of it is about 7/32 or a little less, so it'll fit even on the older agraphs that have 7/32 stubs. And here's what you do. We want to put a V in it. Which is this camera live here? Oh, okay. So we want to put it in, or a V shape in, and two little points. And the idea is that these points will dig into the stub of the agraph, and then you can start turning it out. I would say this works about 80% of the time. So here's how you make it. First, you want to heat it up. Heat up the tip of that until it is cherry red, because you're going to do this with a hand file. And once you've got it heated up, cherry red, you take a triangular file and just start filing. And after you've got something like that, then you can quench it. And I actually did reheat this to cherry red after I was done filing it, because by the time I get it out of the vise and into the water, it's not going to be cherry red anymore. But I want it to be pretty hard, harder than the brass, but not brittle. And so that's what the finished tool looks like. Now, if just speaking of that repair job, if I find that I can't get the agraph stub out with this tool, the next tool I want to use is a drill bit, but I want to use a drill bit that is left-handed. That is, it cuts counterclockwise instead of clockwise. And this, I've never had this one fail. So you do need to mark it pretty well with a punch, and then start your left-handed drill bit in. And what happens, by the time you're about halfway into the agraph stub, the stub itself usually starts turning and it comes out. And how did I get the broken easy out of the agraph? I had them ship the piano to my shop and gave it a lot of thought and research, but I finally bought a carbide end mill. It cost about $50, and I ground the sucker out. It was hard work, it took a long time, and it wore out the carbide end mill, but I got it out. Do we want to take a break about now?
All right, so a little bit of content from that tooling up lecture. really cool stuff as well. Get to make your own tools, modify your tools, see exactly how it's done up close and personal. You know, one of the things I love about these lectures, ability to do it remotely, the ability to have the video recordings and things like that, close-ups views, right? You're not really going to be able to put your face that close to a blowtorch when you're in the workshop working with somebody and they're showing you something. And if there's 5 or 6 other people, I mean, man, everybody's just got to stand back and nobody's going to get a close-up look. But with the kind of content we have, it's really nice. Everybody gets a front row seat, and you know, there's also safety implications, which are kind of cool. All right, so the next one I wanted to give you guys a taste of, a treat, let's say, a trick or treat, no tricks, just treats today. It's a voicing lecture with Steve. And this one's really cool because I think people crave this type of content, you know, live or recorded, just to be able to sit with someone and have them go through a voicing process and, you know, think through, okay, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this. Here's my process to actually do things. So we'll get a chance to watch Steve go through a part of a voicing process, think through some of the choices he's going to make for a piano. And then after that, some of you may or may not know, his wife is actually a professional concert pianist. So she's going to play a little bit for us. So there'll be a little bit of entertainment value there because she's a great player. But we'll probably, I think we have time, we'll get a little bit of a chance to have her evaluate the voicing too. So with this particular recording, I don't believe Steve got to finish the full voicing, or maybe we're halfway through or something like that. So anyway, she just gets to play it and you get to see what is it like for a voicer to interact with the pianist around how does it sound? You know, what kind of language do they use? How do they communicate? There's just a little bit of that, but it's quite educational. All right, here we go. Let's dive into Steve Brady's voicing lecture. Just going to make sure everyone's muted here. It sounds like I'm hearing some background noise. All right, I think we're good. Okay,
Are we on time? Does that sound better?
yeah.
Yeah, sounds better to me. It's a lot rounder, warmer, and let's see, where are we on time? So now I feel that there's a little weakness right here. And you always want to be careful about the 5th octave because that, again, it's a super important area of the scale, and it's easy to overdo it. So let's say I've overdone it on maybe these 2 notes. So what do I do? I'm going to wipe off all the marks now. And kind of start fresh. So these 2, I use a different mark. If I'm evaluating the whole keyboard, I'll make just a 0 on the keys that I feel like aren't giving me enough tone. So I'll pull this out now, and we'll go over here and get some I'm going to use lacquer for this because I've got the B72 in alcohol, which takes longer to flash off. The acetone dries really quick, and I want to make sure I'm getting just the right amount of liquid out there. Yeah, I was just adjusting this nozzle, so I'm just getting a little bit out. And what I like to do when I feel like I need just a little bit more attack is to do what I call striping. And this is just going in off the crown, about a 1/4 inch off the crown, and making a stripe with the lacquer like that. I don't know if you can see that. And then I'll do another one back here.
That.
Okay, so that's this one. And the nice thing about the striping is that it dries really fast. You're not putting that much material in. So I think within 5 minutes we'll be able to hear something on that. And now I'll make another quick pass through and just see if there's any more that stick out to me and take care of those. Okay, those didn't come down enough, so I'll do those again. So it's a little bit like, actually, it's exactly like peeling an onion. You know, you're taking off one layer and then you find another one. Except nobody cries, you know,
Not usually.
unless you really screw up the voicing. Let's see how these are doing. Yeah, they're coming up. And I like to work the unicorda while I'm pounding on them. Okay, so now I want to bring my wife back in here to play one more time and see if she likes the difference. Please say yes.
I'll be honest. Wow. Big transformation. huge difference. I mean, instantly I can play soft. And was it yesterday? It was, I couldn't. Yeah, and I love the voicing. I could tell there's a couple of notes that you didn't work on.
I do that, yeah.
Yeah, and then this is, some of these really, really high notes are super bright still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really didn't touch the highest.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's nice to have some brightness up here anyway, but it's beautiful. Yeah, it's like I can do a lot more. It's like now there's a whole world of color, that's available. I don't have to work so hard. The soft pedal seems like it works more,
Well,
or is that an illusion?
it
Or-
may, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I haven't even voiced the shift, This is is my mic live?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the next step for me on these hammers would be to voice the shift. And to do that, we want to make sure we have string grooves that we can see, and you actually get in and voice with a single needle between the string grooves. I'm not going to do it now, but on a Steinway, I prefer to voice the shift first. Just because with Steinways, I often find myself struggling to get enough tone, and I don't want to overdo it. And I find a lot of times if I just voice the shift first, a lot of the rest position voicing, the normal voicing, is already taken care of. Whereas if I go in and voice the normal stuff first and then voice the shift, I may overdo it. So are we at questions?
Sure, yeah. Let me see what we got here.
One fellow asked if we can show close-ups of the various needle holders, and yes, we'll put that together at the end of the session.
Okay, Peter, actually you can take a look at those there at the top. So Peter.
Peter, what can you say about the cutoff point between hammers with underfelt moving to none? It's something I haven't really paid much attention to. I don't feel like I can tell a big difference, when the underfelt goes away. I think one reason manufacturers use underfelt is as identification, for their different types of hammers. And I've heard perfectly good sounding hammers that had no underfelt at all. So what would you say the duration of this?
All right. So yeah, a nice sample, even though we got to check out about 10 to 15 minutes, a lot of great variety of things that he's addressing. And I saw some listeners out there making comments. Oh, like it's a little bit bright here, like it's a little bit off here. And of course, I knew what was coming, right? So it's interesting, right? You get to hear the pianist make those comments, and right, he can come in and go back and forth with her. Okay, so that you're right, I didn't touch that. Of course, they're in the middle of a voice thing. There's certain things he hasn't done, but number one, it's great to be able to hear those things, right? On recording, you're correct, right? It's probably a little bit bright for the pianist. Pianist might say something like that. Then there's more work to be done. You get to have a conversation around voicing the piano. And we've had other lectures where folks discuss voicing, different opinions, but some of it's some say voice to the piano, or make the piano sound the way that type of piano is going to sound, right? And there's also making it the way the pianist wants it to sound. And then there's kind of like a happy medium, right? A pianist could want a specific sound, but they might not be able to get that sound out of that type of piano. Might have to actually get a different piano to get that type of a sound. Maybe take a Yamaha and make it sound like a Steinway, or a Steinway and make it sound like a Yamaha. Might be a kind of insurmountable task, but we'll leave that for other lectures. So I hope you guys enjoyed the session today. I'm glad we got to get through all the little clips I wanted, the little treats I wanted to share with you guys today. Again, if you're out there watching today, and say, let's say for a week from today, if you want all of these 3 lectures in a package, I'll give them to you, and I'll give them to you at quite a discount, $300 for all of them instead of basically $300 a piece. So hopefully if you're interested, you can take advantage of that. And I will add, which I didn't say at the beginning, I would give you $100 off any one of them. So if you just liked, hey, I like that damper lecture, and I don't know that I need the other 2, I'll also offer you a discount, but that would be for this week's, let's say until next Saturday session. Just email me at ethan@pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. That goes for you folks in the Zoom call today, as well as folks out on the YouTube viewing things. But again, only for this week of initial airing. Yeah. And then of course, just mentioning that we have a lecture coming up, the Tuning Pin Symposium with Larry Lobel. Very excited about that. I saw you folks had some questions about, why is Steve doing this? Why is Steve doing that? He does explain various techniques kind of before he gets into the session. So you will find answers like that within the content. And so, that's a good place to visit. I don't necessarily have all those answers at hand right now. I'd rather you get them from Steve, but great questions. And I'll sign us off from the session today. And just, remind you, look out for those discounts on Larry's lecture. It'll be less expensive if you get in earlier. All right, so let's do our sign off. And that sign off is that we've reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks for Steve Brady for creating this great content for us and making it shareable, continuing on from the day that was recorded. Some of this content was recorded, a few years ago, and it's great to continue to enjoy it and learn from it. Very generous, Steve was at this time. And as always, we're brought to you, and thank you all for being here. Of course, all the folks that showed up today, we appreciate you coming out and being here with us, spend time together on a Saturday. And as always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today by signing up for this session individually, you can make your life more convenient by subscribing to Piano Tech Radio Hour at just $16 a month. You'll get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. You can sign up at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com/PTRH-direct access. And we'll put that link in the Zoom chat in case you need it. And also just look out, by the way, we're going to be experimenting with some new forms of content and also inviting people to participate in new ways. So we'll probably be putting some emails out there. Look out for it to invite. If you want to kind of apply to be a part of Piano Technicians Masterclasses, we're also going to have up to this point, for the most part, the Piano Tech Radio Hour sessions are out of the generosity of the participants' heart, right? They're just coming on to join us and share whatever they can, share a story, share a technique. At least some of our sessions will be compensated moving forward as long as we get applications that have, relevant content. So we'll offer an application so folks can say, hey, I'd like to teach about this. What do you think? Pitch it to us, and we can compensate you for your time for participating not only in the master classes, those are always compensated, but also the radio hour. And then also, I believe we're going to be experimenting with you being able to create your own content and submitting it to Piano Technicians Masterclasses as a way to share it and be compensated for content you create. Again, some things we'll be experimenting with. Look out for emails and invitations around that along those lines. If you don't see it, you can email me directly at ethan@pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, and I can help explain exactly what's going on. All right. Well, happy Halloween. Hope it's a spooky weekend for you, and Monday is frightfully awesome, and that you don't eat too much candy and have a stomach ache. And that's it for today's session. All right, guys, thanks a lot for showing up. We'll talk to you later.